So alright, today we're breaking down this 83 944 engine. It's going to be replacing all the seals and gaskets. So alright, he's got the oil cooler off now. Removing the cam tower now. Moving the head now. So alright, we're getting ready to remove the front crank bolt, and you can see we got the engine on the stand. So what we've done is taken 2 bolts and screwed it into the flywheel, and I'm going to have him go ahead and break it free. So that worked like a charm. Alright guys, we got this thing stripped down now. The only thing we need to do is clean it up and start putting it back together. So alright, last time we got everything taken off this engine here. You see the balance shafts and the oil cooler is removed. We also got the front main seal out. So today we're just going to be getting this gunk off the engine since we don't have to do any bottom end work to it. And then we're going to put it back together and put it in the car. So alright, I'm slowly cleaning this engine off. I'm just going around by hand and just making sure that I get it cleaned off. I'm not trying to hose this thing down or dunk it in water because I do not want any of this degreaser or any of the water to come in contact with the crank or any of the oil system at all. So you can see I've got some paper towel stuff down in here because not only can some of these things rust, but it can get mixed into the oil, and we don't want any of that. You can see I have the cover sitting on here and some paper towels down in it just to prevent any of that from occurring. And I've seen a lot of dirty engines before, but this one is probably the dirtiest one I've ever seen. You can just see there it's like 1/4 of an inch thick down here, and I think I found the reason why. If you can see here, this engine has been painted before. You can see it up here as well. Now, I know a lot of people want to paint them because it makes them look nice, but this is what you can end up with. So just keep that in mind. It may be pretty when you put it in the car, but over time, all that oil is just going to stick to this paint and cause a bigger mess. And then you're going to have to clean both the grease and the paint off. So just a heads up, guys. So alright, I got all that paint and all that crud off the side of the engine now. And it looks like someone spray bombed it one day when they were changing the water pump. So everything except the water pump had paint on it. Luckily it was pretty easy to remove. Didn't give me too much trouble. I wasn't really going for perfection here or anything. I just thought it was well worth cleaning up since I'm changing all the seals and gaskets on it. And this engine has been taken apart before. Found signs of RTV all over the place. And I just left them on there so you guys could see. I still got to clean it off, and you can also see RTV around the oil pump here. I'll probably take that out and reseal it. Originally I wasn't planning on taking the oil pan off and doing the rod bearings, but I would really hate to do all this work only to find out that the rod bearings are bad. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it while I have it on the stand here, and just give myself a little bit of peace of mind. So alright guys, all the parts that I ordered for the 83 944 engine have come in, and before I start putting it together I thought I would take you through some of them. First we have a brand new water pump here. And then next we have the 55mm front main seal for the early cars. And then we have the oil pump drive sleeve and a new seal for it. I always order extras, so that way I'll have them. The air oil separator seals, a new oil drain plug seal, new clutch fork bearings. Next we have the balance shaft seals. Let's see the front seals here, and then the O-rings for the caps here, and then the rear seals here, and then we have some anaerobic gasket maker for the housings themselves. And we have a new rear main seal, new oil cooler housing gasket set, and I went ahead and ordered a new clutch alignment tool, so that way I'll have it. Mine was getting a little worn out there. Next we have new rod bearings, and I'm going to be changing the oil and everything, of course, since I had to dump it. So I got a new oil filter. You see my new timing belt here. That's what broke, and that's why we're rebuilding this engine. Then we have a new Daco balance shaft belt here. And then speed and reference sensors. And then we have the new head gasket set here. And finally, the oil pan gasket. So, alright, today we're going to take the oil pan off this 83 engine and change the rod bearings. Now, as you can see what James is doing here, you want to remove these in just about the same order that you would put them on, so that way you don't end up with any of these bolts holding it down and binding anything up. Alright, we got the oil pan off now. I'll go ahead and change these rod bearings while we're in here. Hate to go to all this trouble to pull the engine and everything and find out that they're bad later on. So, alright, to remove the nuts, you're going to need a 12-point 14mm socket like this one here. And it's better to get it in a half, since these are torqued down to 75 Newton meters or 55 foot-pounds. So, alright guys, we got the rod caps off now, and you want to make sure that you keep them in order. This one came off my number 1 here, so I've got them laid out so that way I don't get them mixed up. And you can see that we have a number here. That number is going to line up with the number on the connecting rod, and you can see this tang here. That is also going to go with the tang that's on the connecting rod. So for instance, this one here goes on my number 1, and goes on just like that with the numbers together and the tangs together. So, alright, you can see the tang here. So what I did was I rotated the connecting rod side out like that, and then you can just lift it out like that there. Here's our new rod bearing. I'm going to take a little bit of this and just kind of work it back and forth here. Don't have to lubricate the back side, of course. Just lubricate this here because you don't want a dry start.
Mention the tang.
Yeah. So make sure that you have your bearing going back into your tang there. And there you go, pretty much like that. I'll just keep working it down in there a little bit, but that's pretty much it, guys. Alright, I have the caps on now, and here are the new rod nuts. You can see that this is the rib style nut that I'll be putting on. Now, since this is an early engine, it has the forged rods, and it originally came with the smooth nuts, but we are going to be putting these on. Now, if you have a later engine with cast rods, you cannot use the smooth nuts at all. You must use the rib nuts, and I'll be going over the two different torque specs, but in most cases you should just go ahead and order new nuts and make sure that they are the rib style. Now, before I put these on the engine, the factory service manual says that the threads should be lubricated, so I'm going to take some oil here and a paintbrush, and I'm just going to slather some oil on there real good. I want to make sure that it gets around the base there as well. So now that it's all lubricated, I'm going to go ahead and run the nuts up. So once I have them tightened with my fingers, I'm just going to tighten them down like that. Next, I'm going to set my torque wrench to about 20 foot-pounds. And what I'm doing here is just making sure that I don't have one side of the cap too loose when I get ready to torque down, because if you don't have at least one side torqued down and you go to torque this to 55 foot-pounds, you could end up stretching your bolt here and snapping it off, and you don't want to do that. So you want to just kind of take it slow, torque it a little bit at a time, making sure that you have even torque on the caps. Once you have that torqued down that way, then you can go ahead and set your torque wrench to 75 Newton meters or 55 foot-pounds. And that's it. So alright, we got everything cleaned up and the rod bearings in. So now we're going to be installing the oil pan, and we got everything here including a new gasket. So alright, we got the oil pan on. We're getting ready to torque it down. We did not use anything on the gasket. It is on dry. You will need a pick to sort of stretch the gasket out as you put the bolts in. Other than that, it goes straight on with no problem. So alright, we've got the oil pan torqued down now, and we're going to get it turned over, and we're going to try and get the oil cooler housing and the water pump on tonight. So alright guys, the other night we got the bottom end put back together and the oil pan back on. Today I'm going to work on installing the balance shafts, the oil cooler, and the water pump. Maybe if I have time, I'll try and get the head on. So alright, the first thing I'm going to install is the upper balance shaft. You can see my surface here is nice and clean. And here's my cover. I have it cleaned off pretty nice as well. But you can see this area here. This is where I couldn't quite get all of the old original sealer off here. And that's actually going to be a problem for this gasket maker here. If it doesn't touch metal, then it doesn't necessarily work. So what you're going to want to do in these situations here is use the surface prep here, and you're going to spray it on your surface, both sides, and then let it sit for about 3 or 4 minutes, and then you can apply your gasket maker. So alright, what I've done is I've rotated the engine over to its side. It makes it a little easier to install the balance shaft. Now I put assembly lube on both halves of the bearing shells and the shaft itself. Rotating it to its side also makes it easier for you to apply the gasket maker. Now I'm going to be spreading this out with my finger, but before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and put the new O-ring on. So alright, now I have the balance shaft cover on, and one thing you want to do is just take your balance shaft and pick the nose up a little bit and just make sure that your shaft is turning freely. This one is, so I'm going to go ahead and torque this down. Now keep in mind that there are 2 steps to torquing these down. These are the order that we're going to torque the bolts. So we're going to do 1, 2, like so here. This is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then this will be 7, 8, then 9, 10, 11, 12, like that. And then we'll go back and torque them down to the final number. Alright, once you have your balance shaft torqued down, then all you have to do is do the next one the same exact way. So right now that the balance shafts are installed, I'm going to be installing the oil cooler housing. As always, I'm going to be replacing the 5R housing and replacing it with a 6R, and I'll show you guys how to install an oil cooler housing here on the bench. So alright guys, I've made a few videos on the oil cooler housings before, and the first video was just me describing all the things you needed to know about them, and then the second one was me installing in the car. But I've yet to make one where I installed one here on a stand. So I thought it would just be a little bit easier for you guys to see exactly what I'm doing. So here's my gasket set, and it's going to have everything that we need. I'm going to go ahead and open it up. First of all, here's our gasket, and it's going to go in like that. You don't need to use any RTV or anything else, but I'll go ahead and actually lay this to the side for now because we're not going to need it right yet. The first thing I'm going to actually use here is this here, and these two green O-rings are the oil cooler seals themselves. And then you have two shims and a plastic spacer. So I'll go ahead and put these back. Like I mentioned, the first thing you're going to want is this black thing here. And if you're doing this on a car, adding a little bit of grease to it helps hold it in place. Any kind of grease will work. And then you just stick it in this hole here. So now that that's seated, you'll want to take your cooler here and remove the seals. Sometimes they shoot across the room. I've got a paper towel in here to keep it from leaking all over my floor. But if you do anything like that, make sure you got everything removed. Should look like this. And here are the replacement seals. Next, you want to take this plastic spacer here, and you're going to put it on the side that you're going to be installing into the housing. It's alright, you're going to want to take the side that you put your plastic spacer on and install that into the housing. But before you do that, you want to use some assembly lube or some oil and put it around the seal like that. And do the same for the other side. This is going to make it easier to install. Now you're going to take your housing and put this in just like that there. So once you've got it inserted, you're ready to take your shims here . Don't install your gasket yet. Take your two shims and take a straight edge and lay it across there and see if you're flush. It looks like I'm a little high on one side, so I'm going to remove one of the spacers here. And that looks to be perfect. So the next thing I need to do is just take my gasket here and put it on, and that's it. You're ready to install this in your car. Alright, and I have the bolts in, but they're just finger tight for the most part. You can see that I can still wiggle the housing around with the alignment tool. And that's what you want to do. You want to just make sure that you center it something like that there. And then you can go ahead and start torquing it down. And that's it, guys. That's how you install the oil cooler. Alright guys, next I'm going to be installing this brand new water pump. And the first thing you want to do is just take a razor and work around a little bit, make sure that the surface is clean and oil free. Get all the old gasket material off there. Looks like someone had some RTV on this. I gotta get that off. Make sure that you use a new razor blade, because if it has any nicks or anything, then it's going to scratch up your mating surface there. And you could get a leak. So, alright, this looks pretty good now. And here's my gasket that I'm going to be using. It doesn't matter what gasket you use, and you can put them on dry like that there, and then just take your new water pump and put it on your studs there. Now I'll go get my water pump bolts. You have this bolt with this wire holder here, and that's going to go right there. Alright, now that the water pump is on, we're going to be torquing these bolts to 8 Newton meters. So alright, next I'm going to be installing the balance shaft caps. Before we do that, I have new O-rings and new seals that I'm going to be installing. Alright, I now have the balance shaft caps on. As you saw, I replaced the O-ring, the front seal, the collar, and the onion skin. I did the same down here, and I just thought I would let you guys see what the early bracket looks like. This car does not have power steering. And next, I'm going to be installing the front crank seal here and the oil pump sleeve. So, alright, the first thing I'm going to do is install the front main seal. And you want to get it lined up here, just like that. And then I have this tool here that is going to press against it like that as I tighten the crank bolt down here. And there you go. As easy as that. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is install my oil pump sleeve. And as you can see, I have my brand new one right here. But before I'm going to install it, I'm going to use my old one here to just check and see if the crank needs to be smoothed up a little bit. And if it does, I'll take 200 or 300 grit sandpaper and just sort of work it back and forth, try and clean the crankshaft up a little bit and make sure it's smooth, so when I go to install the new one, I don't damage it. And you want it to be about like that there. So now I can take my new one and install it with no issue. And once you get this in there, see, that's not engaged. You want to make sure that it goes and engages into the oil pump. Sometimes you have to turn it back and forth a little bit until it goes in. There you go. And then next, you're going to want a new O-ring. And it's going to go on just like that. And you can see just how far back the sleeve sits when it's seated. Then you'll take your O-ring and install it. Then next you'll want to put your washer on. And that's all I'm going to do for now until I get it in the car. And I can put the pulleys on, and then I'll put the bell housing on, lock the flywheel, and we can torque this bolt down. Alright, the last thing I'm going to do before putting this engine back in the car is put the head on it. And I have my head gasket set here. And I'm just going to start by cleaning the mating surface off here. Just go around again with a razor blade. Make sure it's a new razor blade. That way you don't scuff your surface up. So alright guys, today I installed the balance shafts, the oil cooler, the water pump, and the front main seal. Then I put the head on. Next time we're going to be torquing the head down and getting this engine ready to put back in the car. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.